Hello students, I hope you are understanding the lectures. If you are finding any question or query, you can ask from me via email or through Google Classroom. Um, Obviously, we are delivering the lectures through online, so there will be some confusion or difficulty, but you can ask any question regarding your lecture through email, through there are so many um, opportunities are given to you, so you can ask from me. Um, so here, obviously, in the previous last two lectures, we were discussing about the perfect competition, monopoly, and monopolistic competition, as we have covered that chapter. Um, and I hope you got those points where we were discussed about the perfect competition, how these are differentiated from each other, um, about the perfect competition, monopoly, and monopolistic competition. You can go through um, these three types of the market structures, and you can easily think about according to your Pakistan economy that which type of companies these are working through the perfect competition, monopoly, and monopolistic competition. Okay, as you can consider this as your task, and you have to complete this task. I will give you an assignment very soon, and I will place that assignment on your material of economic analysis of the managers subject on the Google Classroom, and you can find easily. And I will also place the deadline date there, and then you can solve it easily. That will be related to your market structure chapter, obviously. Um, these chapters are a little bit tricky, so you have to go through these chapters. You will These all chapters are from your book that I have given you, Michael and Bay, of the managerial economics. I have given to you that book, but I will share that book again on your material. Don't get panic, okay? Obviously, the online lectures are different from your live lectures. From live lectures, you always ask so many questions from me, okay? And we make fun in the classes, means um, that will be obviously little bit break, and you can ask anything, you can ask so many things in that, okay? So obviously you can find little bit ambiguity in things, uh, but obviously, the reading is very important. Reading can solve so many doubts, so many ambiguities, so many problems that are in your mind. Obviously, so this is the next chapter of market structure, that is oligopoly models. But first of all, I will revise the previous lecture as I always revise in your classes, and I ask the questions. Obviously, I don't, I cannot ask the question here, but inshallah, I will contact with you on the Google Classroom. So I will see that how many people are facing difficulties there. So in perfect competition, there are so many buyers and sellers which are competing with each other, and there is no difficulty in entry and exit from the market, and there are actually no barriers or whenever you talk about the short run competitive firm and long run competitive firm, or or perfect competition, you see that always they have perfectly elastic demand curve in case of perfect competition, and in short run um, they face five types of means profits. They can be the loss, okay? They can get the normal profit, they can get the abnormal or supernormal profit, and they have the possibility of the shutdown. I have discussed in the previous lecture that in no you can say in normal profit, the firm have the no profit no loss condition. They are within the break even point. They are on the break even point. Okay, and whenever you talk about the abnormal profit, it means you are talking about profit. First of all, you will keep in mind that in case of profit, your cost will be lower. Okay, your cost will be lower and your revenue will be higher. It means your difference between that revenue and cost, that will be your profit. And now whenever you talk about loss, okay, for example, the firm is bearing the loss, but you have to check whether in term of bearing the loss, they are shutting down or they will working. It means the key point here that the price must be greater than equals to average variable cost. So you have to draw the curve of the average variable cost only to see whether the firm will work or not. Okay, but there are 2 points. Okay, and first of all, whenever the firm is bearing the loss, okay, it means the cost is greater than your price or the revenue. So here the actually price is average revenue curve. That's why I'm saying that the cost must be greater than revenue. Any firm who is bearing the loss, even you can take the example of your university or any other organization, if they are facing the loss, it means their cost must be higher than their revenue. So cost curve means average cost, not total cost. Average cost curve must greater than means above the average revenue curve. And average variable cost, that if that will lie below the price line, it means your organization will run or that factory will work. Otherwise, if that average variable cost and average cost will go up above the price line, so it means they are not able to bear even the fixed cost, so the factory or industry will shut down. Then we have discussed about the long run, and in case of long run, the perfect competitive firm always earn normal profit. They always earn normal profit means there is easy entry, easy exit. So that's why whenever they face the loss, they can leave the industry, and whenever they are getting the profit, they can and in the industry. Obviously, so the price will go to that line where average revenue must be equal to marginal revenue. Okay. Then we have discussed that there is a supply curve in case of perfect competition. That is very important that you must know about the price supply curve, and I will draw the supply curve only in perfectly competitive market. And we say that the supply curve, it is actually the minimum part of the average variable cost, or it is actually the upward part of the marginal cost that is above the minimum of average variable cost. So here the upward sloping marginal cost, that is actually showing the supply curve that we have discussed. Now then we have shifted towards the monopoly, and the basic difference between perfectly competitive firm and monopoly is, um, first of all, in perfectly competitive firm, there are a lot of competitors, okay, and there are a lot of substitutes are available, so people can buy from any market, like it is wheat, rice, or any edible items. They can take from any market, and their prices will remain same. And in case, like we have discussed, the agriculture markets was the best example in perfectly competitive firm. Then we have discussed about the monopoly, and basic difference was in case of monopoly, there are no close substitutes are available. Whenever there are no close substitutes are available, okay, so it means the demand curve, first of all, it is not perfectly elastic, and second thing is the firms are price maker. We have discussed this. In perfectly competitive firm, the firm was price taker, and here it is price maker. Price maker, how does it is price maker? It means they can make the price, they can change the price according to their quantity, according to their profit. Whenever they can change the price, it means their average revenue curve will be negatively sloped, like the demand curve. Whenever average revenue is negatively sloped, so marginal revenue will also be negatively sloped. They have no close substitutes. It means the curve will be less elastic. It means less elastic. They have no close substitutes like WAPDA, okay, and the railway are the best examples of the monopoly market. Then we have discussed about the short run, long run cases. Monopolist will bear the loss in the short run. He can earn the normal profit. He can earn the abnormal profit. All the things, all the strategies, all the basic things are same. Like the perfectly competitive market means the firm will be at equilibrium when marginal cost will be equals to the marginal revenue in each case. uh, the difference will start from the demand curve. The demand curve in perfectly competitive firm will be perfectly elastic, and in case of monopolistic firm or monopoly, that will be less elastic. That's why it will be negatively sloped. Whenever we talk about the normal profit and abnormal profit and loss in case of monopoly, then you must see in mind, you must kept in mind that important point, uh, that whenever the average cost is equals to average revenue, okay, it means the firm is again on the break-even point. Only the difference is the curves will be the negatively sloped, and marginal cost is not equals to price. In case of perfectly competitive firm, marginal cost will be equals to price, but in case of monopoly, the marginal cost will greater than price. That's why there will be some inefficiencies, allocative inefficiency and productive inefficiency will be here. Whenever we talk about abnormal and loss, abnormal profit and loss, in abnormal profit, you must keep in mind that the price or the average revenue must be greater than average cost. So it means that average cost must be above the average revenue. And in case of abnormal profit, that must be below the average revenue. All the diagrams were discussed in the last chapter. So you can go through from there. I'm only revising that chapter for your comfort, that if you are facing any type of difficulty, if you are not understanding the concepts of monopoly, then you can go through these points. In monopoly, there is entry and exit are fully banned. Okay, so there is no concept of supply curve, and uh, there is a lot of misallocation of resources. They will exploit the customers. The basic thing in case of monopoly is, in the long run, they will always earn supernormal profit or the abnormal profit. They will not bear the loss. Okay, they will not allow any competitor to enter in the market. Uh, if they will see any competitor, they will lower down the price. So whenever they will lower down the price, their monopoly will not finish. So here, whenever they always don't want to enter any competitor in the market. This is the first and last thing in case of here. Then we have gone through the concept of monopolistic competition. So this is the mixture of perfect competition and monopoly. In case of monopolistic competition, we have discussed that there are a large number of firms who are competing with each other on the basis of differentiated of products. And basic examples were vehicles, cars, okay, soaps. The firms have the lucrative packing, but inner the commodity or the product is very same. Only the fragrance are different, but the chemical or materials are same. The raw materials are same. They're facing same cost and revenue curves like the monopoly and perfect competition. So In monopolistic competition, the firm there is also a slight entry is available, but it's almost banned. Okay, there are a large number of firms in monopolistic competition. So whenever you talk about their short run, long run, so here in long run they earn only normal profit, and in short run they earn abnormal profit. Okay, because there are a large number of firms, so they can enter in the market whenever they will get the revenue, and they can leave whenever they face there is loss. Whenever you talk about the demand curve, this is somewhat elastic because there are some substitutes are available here, and they have also the advertisement, and you can say R&D, research and development is allowed here. They have a lot of chances for research and development, for technology requirement are available here, and the demand curve is somewhat elastic, means they have control over the price. Main and very important thing in all the market structure was the marginal cost must be equals to marginal revenue in all the cases. Okay, now we have gone through all the market structures. Now I am explaining you the basic oligopoly model. Here we are discussing the oligopoly market. Now you can see that how this oligopoly market that is different from all the other markets. Actually, this is the market structure where only few firms uh, are working, and each of which is large relative to the total industry. So first of all, oligopoly on the other hand, show the market where power is concentrated among a small number of firms. So, this is the basic definition. The exact number of firms is not important, and what matters is that a few firms produce most of the market's output. And in oligopoly market, the barriers to entry for an this oligopolistic market are high as a result of scale of other firms and the competitive advantage that are derived from that scale. Unlike perfect competition, monopoly, and monopolistic competition, it is most useful to study an oligopoly in terms of interdependence and rivalry among its firms. So, this is the basic thing, that interdependence and rivalry. In all the markets, we have discussed that they don't consider about their rival firms. Okay, but in oligopoly we keep in mind the other firms price also, because in case of oligopoly all the firms are interdependent with each other, they are dependent on each other. They will see the profit and price of other firms also. Any firm in an oligopoly that ignores the critical nature of interdependence with its competition places its share of the market and its capacity for profits at risk. Okay, if any firm that is like oligopoly, they ignore the other firms, rival firms, they ignore the condition of interdependence. Okay, they ignore the rival firms, they will not get the profit. Okay, their profit will be at risk. In today's global economy, a number of markets are experiencing increased concentration and consolidation, and regardless of whether an industry's product is homogeneous or heterogeneous. Okay, in the case of differentiated oligopolies, such as the automobile industry, the airline industry, or the banking industry, to the name a few, when relatively few firms compete for the entire market. A firm's behavior in such market, in the context of its interdependence and rivalry with the other firms, will go a long way toward explaining the firm's success or failure. So here are the common industries overshadowed by oligopolies. There are few firms are working, and you have to keep in mind that this is concentrated on specific elite firms. Okay, cable services, and it includes the entertainment, airlines, mass media, okay, computers and softwares, oil and gas, automobiles. These are all the examples of the oligopolies. These are handled by only the few firms and concentrated by the few firms. So that's are the examples of oligopolies also. So you can go through from here. You can see the other concepts of oligopoly.
Oligopoly. Oligopoly refers to a market dominated by a few large firms. Oligopolists may have considerable power to fix prices and output. Power is concentrated in the hands of a few firms, who can dominate a market to gain excessive supernormal profits. The degree of concentration in a market can be measured through concentration ratios. Here, the top three firms have a combined market share of 90%, making the market highly concentrated. Oligopolists are dependent on each other for their success or failure. They are interdependent, and action by one affects the others. Oligopolists may collude or compete with each other. Collusion means acting together for the mutual benefit of all firms. Collusion may be open, referred to as overt, or may be covert, which means agreements are reached in secret. Finally, coordination may be based on shared rules and understandings, referred to as either tacit collusion or concerted practice. For example, oligopolists may employ standardized and industry-wide pricing models, such as cost-plus pricing, which mean that any increase in general input costs translates into identical price increases, without the need for any overt and illegal price-fixing arrangement. If oligopolists do compete, then they clearly prefer non-price competition. Non-price competition includes special promotions, including offering gifts or running competitions. Offers, such as buy one, get one free. Competing on the quality of the product, its design, and its brand image. Competing on service levels, guarantees, and warranties. Oligopolists dominate the high street and include commercial banks and building societies, petrol retailing, cinema chains, and supermarkets. In all these cases, four-firm concentration ratios are in excess of 75%. Interdependence can be understood by looking at the oligopolist's kinked demand curve. If a firm raises price, say from 10 to 12 pounds, rivals will not follow suit, as they will gain an advantage by holding their price constant. Hence, the price-raising firm loses market share and loses revenue. Demand is relatively elastic. Reducing price may lead to retaliation, as rivals are forced to drop their price to maintain their market share. In this case, demand is relatively price inelastic. Revenue is maximized at price P. Profits are maximized when marginal cost equals marginal revenue and are also maximized at P. As marginal revenue falls at twice the rate of average revenue, the marginal revenue curve is split. Any change in costs does not alter the oligopolist's profit-maximizing position, hence price tends to stick at one price. The kinked demand curve illustrates the significance of interdependence, as well as explain the tendency for price stickiness. Game theory can also be used to explain the behavior of oligopolists. All games have rules and payoffs, and require players to have strategies to enable them to gain a positive payoff or avoid a loss. The Prisoner's Dilemma is a game that can provide insights into the behavior of oligopolists. In this game, two associates for a petty crime. They are placed in separate cells. The police officer conducting the interviews suspects them of a more serious offence, although the evidence of their guilt is weak.
So you have gone through this. Obviously, there was explained the game theory. That will be obviously our other topic of the oligopoly. Yeah, because the oligopolistic firms, they can compete or collude, or they can non-collusive also. They are interdependent on each other. Their failure and success are based on their interdependence. Okay, they can make their price and quantity, and their curve will be inelastic here. And these are actually the basic examples: the banking system, or other which are concentrated by the few. So Suzuki, Honda, Toyota, these are the best examples of the oligopoly because the few firms are handling these. Um, each segment of the market is dominated by a certain player. Okay, almost zero competition exists in the market. Zero competition. Suzuki, Honda, and which are Toyota, they have the zero competition here. So these are concentrated by some few firms. So these are called the oligopoly. So here, this is the picture depicting the difference between monopoly and oligopoly market here. So I have told you that there is a difference between monopoly and oligopoly. You can see from here that there are few companies dominate the industry, and pricing is fair but highly influenced by the elite, and difficult to start a business but not impossible. And fast food restaurants are the big example. But whenever you see the monopoly, that is the difference, that they can control the price, they are price makers. And here also it is impossible to start the business because you are going to start a business as a monopolist. So the best example here is Microsoft, or the Google is the best example of the monopoly. Obviously, there is no competitor is allowed here, so that's why it is called monopoly. So here it's showing the difference of the oligopoly and monopoly. You can go through here. So you can differentiate between monopoly and oligopoly also here.
A monopoly is a situation in which one entity dominates a certain market, whereas when it comes to oligopolies, you have a few large players that dominate. In contrast, perfect competition would involve an ideal scenario in which there are lots of sellers, few to no barriers to entry, rational buyers, and so on. Monopolies and oligopolies end up existing for reasons such as 1. The product or service in question simply being a lot better or perceived that way, for example, Google's search engine. 2. Government imposed barriers to entry, with utility companies being a good example. 3. Other barriers to entry, such as huge initial investments or groundbreaking innovation being required to stand a chance. So, why do monopolies and oligopolies tend to be considered bad? Well, primarily due to 1. Price fixing, so being able to set almost any price due to inelastic demand, or in other words, due to people not having a lot of flexibility and being pretty much forced to buy from you. 2. Inferior products being accepted because, again, people have nowhere to go in the absence of meaningful alternatives. 3. Less of a desire to innovate because things are already going well as it is. 4. The ability to strong arm suppliers who are dependent on you. On the one hand, lots of people think action needs to be taken to combat monopolies and oligopolies, for example through fines or new legislation. Others, however, point out that by doing that you're interfering with the free market and punishing success. What do you think? A monopoly think.
So obviously there is a lot of difference between oligopoly and monopoly, as you have seen about that. So oligopoly, there are main characteristics are they are interdependent on each other. There is also the possibility of collusion, and there is product differentiation, and here are some barriers to entry exist also, and there are some firms concentration ratio is greater than 50%. These are handled by only small elite funds also. So these are actually the main characteristics of the oligopolist market or the firm. So here you can take the example here. They have taken the example like Texaco, maybe increase its market share by reducing price, but they cannot reduce the price. They have to see their rivals also like Shell and BP, because if they will reduce the price, they have to cut down the price according to their rivals. So that all the funds are interdependent. They are competing with each other. They can make the collusion. They cannot make the collusion, because when they are competing with each other, it means they are inclusive, and they have to take the prices of the rival funds, then they can generate their profits. Otherwise maybe they can face the loss also. And the second main characteristics of the oligopoly is they have to make the strategy in a very smart way, because firms cannot act independently, so they must anticipate the likely response of the rivals to any change in their prices. It means they have to make strategy by interdepending on each other. So they must share that plan to their rivals also. It is very important for the firms. And obviously in strategy they have to make the plan. They want to compete with rivals or collude with them, or whether they have to raise the price, or they want to reduce the price, or they want to make the price as the constant. So they must share their plan and strategy with other firms. And it is the third main characteristics of oligopolistic firm is that there is barriers to entry here. Um, it means that oligopolies and monopolies frequently maintain their position of dominance in a market, might because it is too costly or difficult for potential rivals to enter the market. In case of monopoly, obviously this is very hard to enter in the market, and in here there is firms can enter, but obviously it's not very easy to enter and exit from the market, and they also and exploit the natural barriers in the market. And here, this is another main characteristics of the oligopoly is that they make the collusions. They can compete with each other also. If colluding participants act like a monopoly and can enjoy the benefit of higher profits over the long run, it means they can act like a monopolist and they can all the firms who are making the collusion, if they will higher the price, they can get the higher profits obviously over the long run. So here you can see the oligopoly. They can it can be collusive, it can be non collusive. What does it mean by collusive or collusion or collude? And it is the member of group, they compete with each other. And whenever you talk about non-collusive, so it means the members of the group don't compete with each other. And here they are making the joint profit maximization or cartel formation. It means they are jointly making the profit and they can work as the cartel formation also. So there is difference between the collusive oligopoly and non collusive oligopoly also. As in the previous slide, I have told you about this oligopoly. This is the this is of the game theory is based on the oligopoly. That the firms are they have the possibility, they must collude or they must compete with their rivals or not, and or they act like a monopoly. If these oligopolistic competitive firms they act like a monopoly, they will get the higher profit also. And obviously we will discuss the game theory that will also based on the oligopolistic market. And whenever you discuss about the oligopolistic market, and you will see that how the funds run or they work through the game theory in the market. um, in the game theory, we'll discuss the different games and different their pricing decisions. We will discuss about their Nash equilibriums also. So here there are some disadvantages. There are advantages of the oligopolistic market, and first of all, they take the benefit to more competitive market structures, such as they lower the price. Okay, and whenever you talk about few firms, they are making the market uncompetitive, so their behavior might be highly competitive. And second advantage is they earn the supernormal profit, and third is they have the price stability. Price stability means all the firms they are acting like they are acting the like exclusive or competitive firms, so their price may be competitive. And there are some disadvantages also. We have discussed the basic definition of the oligopoly, that this market is highly concentrated. So this concentration that maybe reduce the consumer price. And whenever they act like non-collusive, like cartel behavior, they reduce the competition and can lead to the high prices and reduced output. So here they can make the decisions, and that decisions are can be interdependent and can be, this cannot be the interdependent, this can be financial decisions. And obviously there are some barriers to entry, and there can be the potential loss of the economic welfare in case of oligopoly. And oligopolists like the monopoly, they may be face the allocative and productive inefficiency. We have discussed about that inefficiencies of the markets. They may be produced at not at the lower cost, they are not efficient. They maybe exploit the customers because whenever they will not make the competition, it means their prices may be high, or their output will be less, and they are generating the more profits also. So here, advantages and disadvantages, you can see the more advantages and disadvantages of the oligopoly.
Okay, hi there. Some of the main advantages and potential disadvantages of the market structure known as oligopoly are going to be explored in this short video. And we will also consider 3 examples of an "it depends on" evaluation argument that you might want to use in your economics papers. Be prepared to use analysis diagrams to help you where useful. This video on the advantages and disadvantages of oligopoly is diagram 3. A word or two very quickly about the key characteristics of oligopoly. Important to know these. It tends to be a market dominated by a few firms. There's a small number of sellers, each giving some seller market power. It tends to be a high concentration ratio. The top 5 firms typically have more than 60% of the market. Each firm supplies branded, differentiated products, and there are also assumed to be quite high barriers to entry and exit. Crucially, behaviour, strategic decisions by firms are interdependent. You have to think about the likely reaction of your rivals to a change in price or advertising or investment spending. And this means there is ever-present uncertainty about actual business behaviour in an oligopoly. A couple of examples of oligopolistic markets in the UK. Here's the cinema exhibitor chains, the leading 3 cinemas, Cineworld, Odeon and View, together accounted for 69% of the market in 2017. Of course, Cineworld has also recently bought Picture House. So this is clearly an oligopoly with 3 firms essentially dominating the market. And here's some very up-to-date information on the share of the leading smartphone models sold in Britain in April 2019. Well, an oligopoly, yes, but actually in many ways a duopoly, with Apple and Samsung in April taking the biggest share of the leading 5 models of mobile phone. Okay, so the purpose of this video is to take you through essentially 4 arguments for oligopoly and 4 arguments against. So have your revision notes handy. Let's see what we can come up with. So what are the main potential advantages of oligopoly from the point of view of consumers? We could consider other stakeholders, but this video will focus on consumers. First point I want to make is that in a competitive, non-collusive oligopoly, oftentimes you get price wars between rival firms, which causes prices to fall, and that increases consumer surplus, a good concept you can use. Secondly, the ever-present battle for market share often leads to high levels of spending on research and development, which can then improve invention, innovation, so-called dynamic efficiency. My third point is that in an oligopoly, the big firms, the established, dominant businesses, they can exploit internal economies of scale, which then leads to a fall in the unit cost, and in theory that can be passed on to consumers in the form of lower prices in the long term, again benefiting their real incomes. And the fourth point is a fiscal point, that typically in an oligopoly the dominant firms make high abnormal or supernormal profit, and that profit of course can be taxed and could be a source of revenue for the government to help fund key public services such as education and health. So there we go, there's 4 potential advantages of oligopoly for consumers. And here are one or two examples of price wars recently in grocery sector and online streaming market, cinemas, the mortgage market, and other good examples there. A couple of valuation points worth picking out. First of all, price wars do not necessarily benefit all customers. It depends on the range or the extent and the scale of the price war. And secondly, of course, there are some dangers for consumers from the price war, particularly if it leads to some firms leaving the market, making it even more concentrated than it was before. Anyway, hopefully you've then picked up their 4 potential advantages from oligopoly. Now, what are 4 potential disadvantages of oligopoly for consumers? Again, there are many you could choose. I've just picked out 4 points. The first is, of course, there is the danger, the risk, some would say the likelihood of cartel behaviour, collusive oligopoly, some sort of price fixing or market sharing form of collusion, which leads ultimately to higher prices well above marginal and average cost, which causes a loss of allocative efficiency. And typically, high prices, of course, they tend to hurt low-income families, low-income households more than most. So you can talk about collusion having a regressive effect on income inequality. My second point is that a high concentration ratio in the market, the domination of just a few firms, tends to limit consumer choice. And if the barriers to entry are particularly high, that might deter innovative smaller firms from making a profitable entry. The third point is about some of the dangers of very highly persuasive, occasionally misinformed advertising. So persuasive marketing and advertising can often manipulate preferences and therefore distort the allocation of resources and the functions of the price mechanism. My fourth point is that although many oligopolies make high profits, often operating in a transnational way, operating in many different markets across countries, lots of them don't actually pay much in the form of tax, particularly if they avoid paying tax through techniques such as shadow pricing. That would mean the government gets less money. There we go, some disadvantages from oligopoly. The advertising is quite important. These are the biggest advertising spenders in the UK in 2017. Sky and BT and Procter & Gamble, Virgin, L'Oreal, Amazon, Unilever. Most of these big advertisers typically are in oligopolistic markets, and that tells us that non-price competition is important. There's a big issue about the effectiveness of advertising and whether it's economically efficient to have it. So we've been through 4 advantages and 4 potential disadvantages of oligopoly. Just to finish off, this is my final slide. Just want to take you through 3 it depends on evaluation points. So the question, is oligopoly good for consumers? Well, the arguments you can make a case for saying are, rather like this egg, finely balanced. First of all, it depends on the objectives of the businesses in an oligopoly. And the objectives, are they going for profit maximisation or revenue maximisation or sales maximisation? Those objectives influence their behaviour, influences their pricing, their output decisions, their investment decisions, which clearly then impact on consumers. So the objectives determine, in part, behaviour. The second really key depends on point is the extent to which even an oligopoly with a small number of dominant firms is actually contestable. How easy is it for very small firms to come in and really start to tackle and challenge the existing firms? Sometimes if you have a contestable oligopoly, you have both the threat of competition and actual competition that can lead to much more efficient outcomes from the point of view of the consumer. And my third point is that most oligopolies are in some shape or form regulated by an industry adjudicator, a regulator, statutory body, and so the impact, the outcome depends on the effectiveness of industry regulation, for example, in preventing and tackling instances and allegations of anti-competitive behaviour. I always say this point as part of evaluation, but on a micro market structure question, it's important to consider each industry or each market on a case-by-case basis. Don't automatically jump to conclusions based on what the textbook theory says. If you can, consider some of the evidence to judge what the actual outcomes in a market are. Okay, there we go. Hopefully a useful video, a diagram-free video, looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages of oligopoly.
So students who have gone through this concept of the advantages and the disadvantages. Okay, if you will find any questions, you can ask from me. Um, I will wait for your questions. Then after that, I will start the next chapter. We will find the more questions or more difficulties. Then we can revise again this market structure concept, and I will give you an assignment. Today, I will upload on